Make him stay, Merv. Don't let me leave, Merv. Don't let me leave, Merv. No! No!
Would that it were so simple tripping.
You don't say tripping, you say the line tripping.
Would that it were would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple. Would that it were so simple.
How you died?
I died.
A little bit.
For how long?
7 minutes.
A bit less.
I died for 7 minutes.
A bit less.
Approximately.
Proud of their jewelry, but of nothing else. Horrible. Faded, fat, greedy women.
They're alive. They're human beings.
Are they?
Hey, how are you? Sorry to yell into the mic. We're back. I'm back once again. It's been a week. It's been 2 weeks actually, and thus it is a catch-up show. There have been weeks recently where I've only had 1 or 2 films to talk about. Now I have 10 films to talk about, and as I like to say, talk about, which is also try to remember. We are going to discuss some films that are in general release, some films that are in not terribly general release, and a whole mess of stuff on video. Some of coming from our friends at Arrow, from our friends at Blue Underground, from our friends at Dark Sky, all the niche, cool, cult horror kind of labels, my kind of movies, as I like to say. So, we're going to leap right into the fray here with, gave it the finger, with a new film from Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie, who gave us such films as Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Snatch, and the Sherlock Holmes movies of recent years, and the Aladdin remake, funny enough. We have a back to his old territory kind of film about a bunch of cockneys, about a bunch of geezers, about a bunch of gangsters, about a bunch of rough guys who are walking the wrong side of the law. They are many things. They could be called many things, but one of them is not the gentleman. Okay, so I saw Lock, Stock when it came out. I enjoyed it. I saw Snatch when it came out. I loved it. And I've been hot and cold on Guy Ritchie since then. He sort of falls into the same category of the Cockney, London, tough guy, gangster, thug movies. That's where his bread and butter is. That's where he's had his greatest popularity. And then he's branched out into doing other things. So this is going back to that again. I don't think he's made a movie like this for a few years. He did Rock and Rolla, and another one that I didn't like and couldn't remember. Personally, for me, I haven't really liked a Guy Ritchie movie strongly since Snatch, so this one coming up, I was hopeful for it, but the trailers didn't look that great to me, and ultimately, I'll just cut to the chase, I didn't think this was all that great for me. It felt like the kind of movie Guy Ritchie maybe should have been making 15 or 20 years ago as opposed to now. It felt very Guy Ritchie. It's all poppy dialogue and a lot of swearing and violence and fast cuts and switcheroos and kind of some fun camera work and some quirkiness, a lot of humor. But ultimately, to me, it was just kind of a mess. McConaughey, so what's the story? Matthew McConaughey plays an American who went to Oxford, or I believe it was Oxford, and becomes a drug baron in England. And he is being courted by various other underworld types to buying his business. And so it's a lot of people, a lot of double crossing and playing both ends against the middle, and people being beaten up and threatened and shot, and the C word. Okay, here's the deal. The CPM, the C word per minute in this film, it has to set a record. I was thinking just the other day, I think if you took the number of people John Wick kills in John Wick 3 versus the amount of times they use the C word in The Gentleman, it's a toss-up what the larger number is. It's just like, it's used so often that it doesn't have any impact. And yes, these people may talk that way, but it's like Tarantino for me. Sometimes the profanity and the F-bombs are so overused that it starts to feel phony. And for this movie, there are many moments where I'm like, wow, if that was the only time they used that word, that would have had a big impact or it would have been a big laugh. But like the 350th time you hear it in the movie, you're like, okay, yeah, you're using that word. It doesn't mean anything anymore. The story is kind of strangely told. Basically, the framing story is that Hugh Grant shows up in the house of Charlie Hunnam, or where Charlie Hunnam is working, and he's basically blackmailing him into giving him a whole lot of money to not publish a story about his boss McConaughey's empire. So the movie is odd. It is sort of Hugh Grant's tabloid reporter dictating what the story is, but then they say, oh, that's not how it happened, and it goes a little bit differently. And some of it is you're seeing play out in real time, but most of this movie is told sort of it as an extended flashback. And we keep coming back to the Hugh Grant and Hunnam storyline. For me, it just never really connected with me. It felt a little forced. It didn't feel as cool as it was trying to be. Like the first two Guy Ritchie movies were very cool. This feels, I hate to say it, he could be a wonderful person. But to me, it feels like watching an Oliver Stone movie now where Oliver Stone is still trying to use the style he did in the 90s, and it doesn't feel like it works for me. So at any rate, if you're a fan of Guy Ritchie movies, of his early stuff, you may well like this movie. Maybe it was just me, but this is like so many films I've seen in the last couple months where I'm okay with it up to a point, and then it gets to a point where I'm like, yeah, this could end any time now. I think I'm done with this. And for me, The Gentleman was one of those movies. Now we'll move on to the next film. So The Gentleman is playing like everywhere. That was, I think, one of the big two releases last week. This is a very small release. This is a film. Thank you for alerting me to the wrong camera. This is, or I could just do the whole show in profile and it'll be artistic. This is a film that is playing in limited release. I saw this in New York City. This is playing here, there, and everywhere, but, well, here and there, not everywhere. This is a new film by Richard Stanley, the man who gave us Dust Devil a very long time ago, Hardware a very long time ago, and who tried to give us The Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, and that was taken away from him. And if you want to see a really good documentary about a film falling apart and a disaster, it's a film called Lost Soul, and it is about Richard Stanley trying to make The Island of Dr. Moreau and what happened, and then how that kind of bad movie became that bad movie that it became. Anyway, Richard Stanley is back, and he has got Joely Richardson and Nicolas Cage in his cast, and this is a tale of what happens when a meteorite falls from the sky in the backyard of this farmhouse, average family in the sticks, and how it turns things purple and very sour for them when they come face to face with the color out of space. Not to give anything away, but things are not okay. So, based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, which I may have already said, which has previously been shot a couple of times under this title, and I think the oldest that I could find was Die Monster Die with Boris Karloff. So again, the story is this sort of average family living in the sticks, and this thing appears in their yard, much like the Blob. This thing comes down and they poke at it with a stick, and it just starts turning things not good. Things start getting strange in this area, and people start acting strangely, and strange things start happening, and things start transforming. It's Lovecraft, so it's going to be goopy, it's going to be weird, it's going to be interdimensional, it's going to be all that. I saw this on the big screen at the IFC Center in New York. I'm glad I saw it on the big screen because I think I would not have thought as much as I did of it if I had seen it at home on the small screen. It's not... it's good. I thought it was good. At times it's very disturbing when it gets into some of the things that the family goes through as a result of this strangeness. There's some serious drama and darkness and some pretty gruesome stuff. And there's one moment in the film that was a practical effect that was really pretty scary. It's a very brief, like, ee kind of thing. And it's, as I said, it's gross at times too. Nicolas Cage, I find it hard to take Nicolas Cage seriously anymore. He's made so many bad movies, and he's sort of known for going nuts and goofy and silly in films that when he's supposed to play straight, like he does for the majority of this film, I feel like I can't take it seriously. Like I feel like he's pretending to be normal because he's going to go crazy later, which he does in the film. And when he goes crazy, it just comes off as silly to me in this movie. I think if you had a different actor who was more known for not going crazy, a lot of the drama would play better than it does with Nicolas Cage in this. So dramatically you're anchored by Joely Richardson and Nicolas Cage as the parents. The kids are kid actors. They're okay. Tommy Chong is in it very, very briefly as this weird hippie guy who lives out in the woods. It's not a very big cast. It was filmed in filmed in Portugal. It's funny how many adaptations of Lovecraft wind up being filmed in Spanish-speaking countries or Hispanic-type countries. I know a lot of the Brian Usna stuff was shot in Spain, so it's just, I find that interesting for some reason. Visuals are really good. Visuals, CGI, and a lot of practical effects are really effective on the big screen. good use of color and sound and stereo sound. That's where I would sort of push that this would be a better big screen experience. Something about even watching this at home on a large screen, I feel like it would come off as a bit cheaper or a bit less involving than it did in the theater. I know people who've seen this and really liked it. I thought it was okay. I don't think I would watch it again. I would not. I don't know. I just didn't think it was that great. It was okay. I'm not a big fan of Lovecraft in general, so that might have something to do with it. And also just it felt to me, for me, like it took too long to do what it was going to do. Some of it was kind of repetitious and I don't know. It was interesting, let's say. I'm glad Richard Stanley was given the chance to direct a film fairly, the film that gets a release and has some money behind it and not just, tiny indie things. So that's out there if you want to see it. You're going to have to hunt it down. I don't think it's going to be around long. I think this will probably go from indie theater to indie theater. And unfortunately, indie and art house theaters tend to not lean toward the fantastique or cult or genre cinema very much. So if you can see this on the big screen, you're lucky to be able to do so. And anything is better in a theater, I think. Another film that is in tiny release that I saw this weekend stars Alfre Woodard, who is a person who lives very close, or did for many years, to where we're taping this right now. Alfre Woodard stars as the warden of a smallish prison who presides over executions, lethal injections. And as time goes on with the story, she is involved with one prisoner who's about to be executed. And the film basically follows her and his journey to that climactic moment, whether it happens or not. And both she and he are both looking for clemency. So like much of the world of acclaimed indie cinema, this is one you have to kind of hunt down. This was not playing, so I was in the greater New York area, and there were very few places to see this. There was a theater here and there showing it. So this is one that will probably roll out slowly across the country. I think this was probably released too late for it was released too late for Oscar and Golden Globe stuff, so it's not going to get a push from that. It's going to be word of mouth and critical acclaim. It's a Neon release, which is a company that I believe grew out of Draft House Films, the Alamo Draft House company, and they get fair to middling releases. But the fact that it's not available everywhere has nothing to do with the quality of the film. This is a straight drama. This is a heavy drama. This is depressing and kind of puts you through the emotional ringer. As I said, Alfre Woodard is the warden of this prison. Film opens, she's presiding over an execution, and you see what that procedure is like. The execution does not go very well, so she's under scrutiny. There is a prisoner who is up next for the needle, and so there are groups who are trying to fight for his release or to get a pardon or to get reconsidered or appeal and all that. And basically this film, it only focuses on a couple of characters. It's Woodard front and center and how this impacts her life, how being the warden of this prison and trying to give everybody dignity and respect and see them out as, according to plan as much as possible, how that affects her home life, her professional life with coworkers. And then also we see the prisoner in question and what it's like for him when he finally realizes, yeah, this is going to happen and you're not getting out of this. And there's question as to whether he's guilty of the crime he was there for. There's another lawyer who's trying to fight for him and try to delay this and get an appeal. You see the prisoner with various members of his family who visit him and trying to connect with them and make peace. And it's grueling. And what's interesting about this, going into this, I thought, well, I saw Dead Men Walking a while ago, and that seemed to really cover this pretty well. And so what does this film have to offer? It has plenty to offer because it's not covering the same ground. Dead Man Walking was very much an anti-capital punishment movie, or one that at least bandied that notion and that topic around a lot, and really got dug deep into the person who is going to be executed and the person who is trying to support them. This doesn't do that as much. It gives it sort of just stands back and says, well, this is this journey these people take, and this is how it works, and you can think what you think about it, but this is just a straight ahead telling of it. It doesn't really get into pro or con capital punishment. It doesn't really dig into whether this person did this crime very much or not. Some say he did, some say he didn't. It's really more about how these people are going through this really difficult thing. For one person, Alfre Woodard, it's supposed to be routine. This is you go through this routine, you do it the same every time, and it has to be done. You try to do it as quickly and expediently as possible so nobody is suffering any more than they need to. And then for the prisoner, it's like you realize your time's up, and you need to reconcile some things. So I don't recall how long this film was. It was 2 hours or less. It never felt long to me. It was just really, really good. Small cast, very good performances all the way across. Alfre Woodard is at the core of this film. She's very quiet and understated, but very, very powerful. So I would highly recommend Clemency if you can find it. It's not an upper. It's not a whistle on a tune as you walk out of the theater movie, but it's interesting. It's look inside a world you don't often see in film, and it's also I don't know, just pretty heavily dramatic and powerful. So, speaking of home video, got 37 minutes to cover 11 movies. No problem. We have a whole bunch of films that are now available on the home video service, channel, streaming device, subscription of your choice. First up is a film that I saw in the theater not that long ago. Let me make sure it's the right one. Why? Why, yes, it is. This is the sequel to a very popular comedy, horror comedy from a few years ago. Basically picking up, however many years it's been since we saw the last one. This is where these characters are now. It is all of your favorites from the original film, plus a few new cast members, and it is Zombieland Double Tap. So this was a film that was made, the original Zombieland was several years ago. It was a big hit. I didn't really care for it that much, but it was popular. We're back. This movie feels just like the first one. I think I probably liked this one better than the first one. It's just fun. It's dumb. It's goofy. It's gory. It opens with one of the best I've seen in a while. One of the best things where you get the classic opening logo to a film company. In this case, it's Columbia Pictures or Sony Pictures, and you have the lady with the torch. And zombies attack her, and she uses the torch martial arts style to take out the zombies. It was really funny, and that sets the tone for the rest of the movie. It's silly, it's off the wall. You have some new characters that are quite funny. The dumb girl character is a good dumb girl character. You see Rosario Dawson as a woman who runs a motel that our gang stops at, and she has a love of Elvis, as does Woody Harrelson, and Woody Harrelson sits down at the piano, and I'm like, oh, here we go, he's going to do the same lame Elvis impersonation that everybody does, and he's going to sing one of the same Elvis songs, and he sings Never Been to Spain, which I thought was cool, because if you're a fan of Elvis like I am, that was a big concert song. And anyway, I thought Zombieland 2 was fun. If you like the first one, it's fun. If you haven't seen the first one, I don't imagine this is going to be that hard to get into. They set up the premise pretty quickly at the beginning with a lot of voiceover. And I mean, what's the premise? There are zombies and people are alive trying to kill them and stay alive. That's pretty much all there is to it. I don't know if we'll get more Zombieland films. We probably could. If they keep them funny and moving along and they give us weird vehicles and weird people that they run into and the occasional celebrity cameo, there you go. This had a celebrity cameo in the end credits that tied back to the first film that I thought was really not funny, and it was extended and it went on and on and on, and I thought it was lame. But overall, I thought Zombieland 2, Zombieland Double Tap was fine. It was not bad. As a sequel to a movie that I didn't like, I liked it better than the first one. So put my name on the box cover of the reissue that says better than the original. So speaking of sci-fi and horror and genre films, we'll just go over here. So I still haven't had a chance to do a best and worst of 2019 show. And I know it's killing you that you don't know what my lists are, but maybe as we just hit these all on video, I'll just tell you if they're on the list or not. This next one is. This next one falls onto, I believe, my list of the worst films I saw last year, or the 10 worst, top 10. We have a sequel to an iconic film franchise. We're seeing a lot of this lately. Boy, I thought that film series had wrapped up a long time ago after they made one or two that weren't good. No, wait, we'll make another one that's not good 20 years later. This is the latest in the Terminator franchise. We have a new person who is being saved by somebody from the future while a Terminator from the future is also coming to save them. And we get Linda Hamilton back, and we get somebody else back, which should really be a surprise in this movie, but I'm sure this trailer gives it away. This is Terminator Dark Fate. It's so hilarious when they use that same line they used in all the other movies, but it's a different person saying it, isn't it? I thought this was garbage. I wasn't going in with a chip on my shoulder, aside from thinking, this probably is unnecessary. I'm not even going to say one sequel too many, because, first Terminator, solid flick. Second Terminator, amazing. Third Terminator, wow, they didn't need to make that, but it's actually kind of a fun action movie. And then they kept making Terminator movies that I don't know that anybody really cares about. But you bring back the original actors and people get excited about that, even though that time to bring them back might have been 20 plus years ago. So the story it's the same story. That's the thing about this. This is just, we've seen this before. It's the same thing again. It's just like, well, now there's somebody else the Terminator is coming back for, and we have to protect that person. And we rope in Linda Hamilton again, and she's just like a grandmother version of what she was in Terminator 2. And we bring someone else back who has a complicated way of explaining why they're still around. And I'm not going to say it, because if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, where I've chopped the trailers out for copyright reasons, maybe you'll go into this movie if you watch it, and you won't know the big surprise if they don't put it on the poster image or the box cover or whatever, which I'm sure they did. It's the same thing all over again. It's a woman in peril, and she's going to have a baby someday, or she has a kid, and somebody's protecting it because that kid's going to be important, or whatever the deal is. And we have a liquid metal Terminator again, which somehow is with modern effects, is far less convincing or impressive than Robert Patrick was back in 92 or whatever it was, 91. We have Linda Hamilton is back as a tough lady, and it just seems forced. It seems like she's putting on the tough person clothes, whereas in Terminator 2, you were like, man, this is a scary lady. The effects are bleh, bleh. The action is not that interesting. It just feels like somebody is getting off on restaging a lot of the things they loved a lot about the first two Terminator movies. And it was this movie or another film I saw recently that made me realize with these long-running film franchises, for the most part, it's really just one or two good ones. And after that, it's movies that are repeatedly trying to recapture what you can't recapture because you can never see that thing for the first time again. So we keep getting these sequels that just try to half-assedly redo what we saw and loved as kids. And I don't get excited when oh my God, Stallone is back to do a Rambo movie at the age of 78. Well, you know what? The time to do that would have been 1978. Not with Rambo, but you know what I'm saying. I don't get off on these movies that, they got them back together again. It's too late. So Terminator Dark Fate, you might like it. There might be people who liked it. I didn't. I thought it was dumb and unnecessary, and I think I would not have rated it so low if I didn't know where it came from. If I hadn't seen all the other Terminator movies, I might have thought more of this, but I'm just seeing a weak rehash of what I've seen before, and it was just pointless. Now, I don't want to speak, if you've seen the movie, you know who I'm talking about. There's a character they bring back that you don't expect. That was just silly for the most part, and they try to make this character funny, and it's, on occasion it is, but for the most part, it's just silly. And it's like, putting The Rock in a tutu in a movie. Ha ha, he's dressed like a ballerina. Wow, that's really complicated and high-minded humor you have there. So anyway, Terminator Dark Fate is out now. I think it's been out for a week because I'm slow catching up on these things. Speaking of movies that are on a list, we'll do this. Thank you. This is total opposite. This was on my best of last year list. It's on most people's who saw a lot of movies. It's on their best of list. This film won a whole bunch of Golden Globes, is nominated for a whole bunch of Oscars. This is a film by, let me get the name right, this is Bong Joon-ho. He did films such as Snowpiercer and The Host and Memories of Murder. He's a Korean filmmaker. And this is taking the world by storm, this film. This is a movie about this very poor family in Korea who the son gets a job, temporary job, being a translator for the daughter of a rich family who lives on the hill. And one by one, this family decides to get their hooks into this family financially by causing everybody else who works for them in a service level to get fired or replaced by this family so that they can basically make a lot of money and spend a lot of their time at the rich folks' house. This is what happens when your family essentially becomes a parasite. So needless to say, this was really good. I did not expect, I really didn't know much about the story going in. I knew that it was about a poor family, and as you see in the trailer, God, the trailer doesn't give that much away. The storyline, it's best to go in knowing as little as possible. I think I told you about as much as you need to know. It is much funnier than I expected. It's very funny at times, but it also, something happens and the story takes a huge detour and becomes very dark and very serious and very edge of your seat, like incredibly tense. It's beautifully shot at times. There's a sequence where the family, there's a big rainstorm or there's some flooding, and they live literally below ground. And it's about the haves and the have-nots and class and social climbing and all of that. So the family in question, this poor family, lives below street level, and the house that they're working at lives way up high on a hill. So there's the sequence where the father and son are going to check on their house during a rainstorm or a flood, and they're descending down and down and down and down this long walkway from the rich area of town to the slum where they live. And there's so much depth and power lines in the foreground and so many planes of depth in this shot. You wish it was in 3D. It almost had a 3D effect. It was so well composed. It's just a really, really good movie. This has been insanely popular for a reason. And when it won one of the many Golden Globes, the director had said that, yes, this movie is subtitled, but don't let 1 inch at the bottom of the screen keep you from discovering really great stories. And I have to say the same thing. Yes, it's subtitled. I trust you know how to read. Don't let that get in the way of you watching a really good movie like this. It's so good. I don't want to say too much about it other than it's very well done. It's very dramatic. It's very exciting and thrilling and edge of your seat and also very funny. And when it makes those twists, some movies can't juggle that. Either the comedy doesn't quite work or the thriller, you can't take it seriously because it's a comedy movie. But it works really well in this film. So Parasite, it's out. You should see it. It's up for awards. Not that that should really influence you, but it might. And we'll move on to a less classy film. So, Lucio Fulci, do you know who he is? Probably not. He was an Italian director who worked from the, let's say, 60s. His sweet spot was really the 70s into the 80s. He is known for such horror films as Zombie, which was sort of a knockoff sequel, not really, to Dawn of the Dead, and for The Beyond and some other movies like that were these weird, supernatural, very gory Italian horror films, often set in the U.S., with 1 or 2 English-speaking cast members. This is one of those films. This is a film that was made in 1981. It's set in Massachusetts, New York and Massachusetts. Some of it was shot in Massachusetts. The titular house in this film is still there, and you can actually go and see pictures of it online and visit this house in Massachusetts. And this is basically the story of a family who moves into this nice old antique house and finds out that there's something in the basement, and it's killing people. This is The House by the Cemetery. So this is a Blue Underground release. Blue Underground has previously released this on DVD. They may have had it out on Blu-ray too, and I think Anchor Bay may have had it out before that. Blue Underground is Bill Lustig's company. Bill Lustig, who did Maniac and Maniac Cop and a lot of fun movies over the years, Vigilante. He has this video company where he re-releases a lot of films and restores a lot of films that had been sort of New York City, Times Square, 42nd Street Grindhouse kind of classics, CLASSICK. And House by the Cemetery is one of those. So this release looks amazing. This is a film I'd seen before, and I'd seen other video incarnations that I always thought looked good, but boy, they never looked as good as this. This is like a new 4K restoration. It looks like, it always comes down to skin tones, I find. A lot of times films look good, and then you see them in a new restoration from the negative, and you're like, wow, this movie kind of doesn't look old. It's, in terms of the quality of the film, the hairstyles and cars, yeah, they look like 1980, 81, but the actual people, it's kind of amazing when that happens, and you think you know what a film can look like, and then you get a transfer like this, and you're like, oh, it can look like that. So yeah, this is a Fulci movie. So it's light on intellect, it's heavy on gore. This is this family lives in this house, and things are dragging people into the basement, and this thing is coming up out of the basement and killing people, and eventually you learn who and what this thing is. And it's gruesome. It's gruesome. It's got a good mood. It's got a good tone to it. It has a fun score. This is a 3-disc set. So disc 1 is the movie on Blu-ray with some extras. There's a new Troy Howarth scholarly audio commentary about the film, and then like trailers and TV spots and stuff like that. That one that you just saw, if you're seeing this on TV, was narrated by Brother Theodore, which is amusing to me. Then you have a second disc that's all extras. It's a disc loaded with extras, and that's all interviews with pretty much everybody who's alive who was involved with the film. So a lot of cast members, a lot of behind-the-scenes people, and a couple, retrospectives on the film by, Euro horror or Fulci film scholars. And then you get a third disc that is the soundtrack, which is kind of cool because the soundtracks to these movies weren't always that easy to get in this country. And now when these new packagings come out and you get it on CD sounding, as good as possible, that's pretty sweet. So House by the Cemetery, if you like 80s horror, if you like Euro horror, and if you like gore, this is for you. I've never really been much of a Fulci fan. I think the films are okay to watch, but I don't really like them that much because personally I think they're fairly badly made, and they just focus on the gore so much, you're just like, yeah, yep, that's a body, yep, it's open, that's fantastic story. So I'm not a huge fan of these, but this packaging is amazing. And for fans of the film, like the Arrow releases, this is one where it's just like you can toss all the other ones. This is the one to get. I believe this ports over most of the extras that were on the previous Blue Underground edition. So you get what the goodies were on your previous set, plus at least half a dozen new things that weren't there before. So, sticking with the line of horror and fantastique and supernatural, all natural, we have a new film that Dark Sky Films has put out on DVD this week. This is a film where a man, a mute, which you don't see in film a lot, goes out to a lake house to sort of relax and just mellow out. And he meets this cool girl who keeps swimming up to the dock and talking to him. And she always seems to be in the water. She never really kind of leaves the water that much, which is odd. And he meets a neighbor who's a man who lost his husband to this weird creature in the water. And we start to wonder if that creature and this girl are one and the same, and if in fact they are the Siren. Hi, totally wasn't checking my phone. That's my notes. When I watch a film and I know it's going to be a week or two before I'm going to review it, I take some notes so that I can sort of refresh my memory on what I thought of it at the time. So, The Siren, indie, horror, dreamlike, very dreamlike, artistic, floaty horror movie. Reminded me of Night Tide in some ways, if you've ever seen that with Dennis Hopper, which just got a new video release, by the way, in Europe, if you're interested in that. So, very artistic, very dreamlike. Didn't care for it tremendously, maybe because it was a little too loose for me, maybe a little too artistic for me, for my simple mind. It's 79 minutes, but to me it felt long at 79 minutes. And I felt it was very sort of sloppily presented in some ways. The camera work or the editing, that may have just been an artistic vision, but for me, I'm just like, could we hold the camera still? Could we focus everything and not just the thing in the foreground? So it's interesting. It's interestingly presented. A tale of a siren or a mermaid or whatever you want to call this thing. And it's, again, a very small cast. I think there's only about 3 people in this movie. You have the guy, his neighbor, and the girl. And maybe in flashback you see the husband who'd been killed and all that. So it's just a very mellow, very kind of art house, fantasy kind of film. So that is out from Dark Sky Films on DVD. There's 2 commentaries on this, one with the cast and one with the technical crew, and I think there might be an interview with the director on there as well. So that is out now from Dark Sky Films. Now, we're going to try to get through 2 movies in 10 minutes. Can we do it? Thank you. It's the Arrow Video Corner. I'm going to talk fast and just introduce this clip. We have a film that is a film noir that is based on a Cornell Woolrich story, and it stars Dan Duryea, June Vincent, and Peter Lorre, and a very young Broderick Crawford in, what is it called? Black Angel. I love film noir, so I was excited to watch this, and it's one I'd never seen. And I'm watching it not too far into it, and I'm like, have I seen this? This seems really familiar. And it turns out this is not a remake, not based on the same source material, but is incredibly similar to a film I reviewed that Arrow has put out called Phantom Lady that was also built based on a Cornell Woolrich story. So the story is a woman gets murdered, this guy is thrown in jail for it, he's going to be executed, his wife tries to clear his name along with the help of the ex-husband of the woman who was murdered. This ex-husband was drunk that night, doesn't remember a lot, and they're trying to suss out the mystery of these clues that might indicate that the husband who's in jail and about to be executed didn't do it. So it's a race against time movie. It's very stylishly done at times. Seeing a young Broderick Crawford is cool. It's got all the film noir elements that are fun. And it's a whodunit, and you never will guess who did it until the very end of the movie, unless you've seen Phantom Lady, in which case you're like, oh yeah, that's sort of the same thing. I like this a lot, even though it's very similar to another film. That's not this movie's fault that I had seen that other film. So I would recommend Black Angel. It's really cool. It's got a commentary by a film noir historian. It's got a video appreciation on it, and then I think it has that trailer that we just saw, which is kind of a hoot to a degree. So I'm moving right along. Black Angel, very cool. Then we'll swing back over here, and we'll say Jose Ramon Larraz, who did films like Vampires and Whirlpool, who Arrow put out a set of a few years ago, or last year. This is a late film he did from 1988. This is a slasher film shot in Spain, set in the US. It's called Edge of the Axe. Or It's a Great Night for a Bad Movie. This was not good. This was not good. This is a movie I'd never heard of. I think it came out on video, was out on VHS in this country, but it's just never one that I rented. It's not even a box cover I remember seeing, and I'm pretty familiar with a lot of box covers. So it's a slasher movie. You have somebody you have this axe murderer with this really interesting kind of creepy mask that's killing people in this rural California mountain town. and everybody's a suspect. Various people, you're trying to figure out who it is as the movie goes along. There are various crazy people. Our lead dude who falls for a local girl, he has a computer, very early PC, that is on some kind of an internet thing, so it's treated very much as a novelty, so it's easy to go back and laugh at that now. A heavy product placement, which at the time I wondered, and it bore this out, that this is made in Spain. Everything, it's always a label out. And a lot of Sunkist apparently consumed in this small California town. And I think that was done to say, look, it's the US, look, it's a picture of Reagan on the wall, there's an American flag everywhere, there's products, it's America. I wouldn't have known it wasn't America. It really does look like it was shot here, or in the mountains of California. Acting, not terribly great. The kill sequences are pretty effective. There's one in a car wash that you see in the trailer at the beginning of the movie. That's really cool and kind of intense. It's not ridiculously gory. There's no nudity. I don't remember a heck of a lot of profanity. It's really just pretty cheesy. And it's the kind of film that feels like what it was, which is a predominantly non-English speaking crew is shooting a film with English speaking actors for the international market, and it just doesn't feel natural. It comes off feeling really cheesy and really silly. So I'd never heard of this film, as I said. I was surprised that Arrow put this out. I kind of think sometimes Arrow buys packages of movies from certain directors or production companies, and maybe it's a contractual thing, or maybe they think it would be fun to put out. Usually you see Arrow, you think this movie is going to be great, but sometimes it's something like this where I think this is pretty bad. But if you like this movie, you never otherwise would get an edition that looks perfect and has tons of extras, as it always does, multiple commentaries, or at least one commentary, extras, interviews, all that stuff with people now. It's cool to see what the actors look like 30-something years later. And it's a fun movie to watch with friends and laugh at. I couldn't take this seriously because it was so cheesy. So at any rate, Edge of the Axe is out now from Arrow, and it's loaded like every Arrow disc is. I will be back next week talking about probably way fewer movies than this. All I see coming out are Gretel and Hansel, the new sort of gender-flipped or whatever Hansel and Gretel take, and a movie called The Rhythm Section. I don't know what that is. And then on video, I see here Dr. Sleep, The Good Liar, The Nightingale, and hopefully I will finally get to the Garage House Pictures release of Robert W. Morgan's Bloodstalkers, which I actually shot some things for that are on that Blu-ray. So I'm going to let you go. We're just about out of time. And I will say, I'm Mark, I am the Cinemaniac, and I will see you at the movies. Bye.
Thank you.